Hey everybody, I'm back to do another one of my character reviews. Like my friend mentioned in his video that he did day before yesterday, I think. This time the characters we're reviewing are Kaylee from Quest for Camelot and Prince Charming from the Cinderella franchise. He did his Kaylee video a couple days ago, and I'm here today to do my Prince Charming video. Anyway, I've got a pretty long list of complaints about him. Starting with, he's a boring, flat character. He has no personality. He's not proactive. He wouldn't go after Cinderella. He's shallow and only likes Cinderella for her looks. He's willing to marry any girl that fit the slipper. He's stupid because he didn't remember Cinderella in the third movie. He's lazy. He's ugly, and a couple of things that he's been compared to as far as being ugly are a melted Ken doll is something that my friend mentioned, and something that I remember him being compared to is a robot. He's rude to the other girls because he rolls his eyes and yawns. And he was so bad they tried to fix him in the third movie. Well, something that I should probably mention is I haven't always been the biggest Prince Charming fan. I used to think that he was kind of a boring, plot device. Not a bad character, but pretty boring. Until I rewatched the third movie for my Anastasia Tremaine video a few weeks ago. And then I found out that I actually loved him, especially in the third movie, and he's moved up quite a bit to my second favorite Disney prince, and into my top 10 favorite animated heroes. And while I do get some of these complaints, like the boring one to an extent, a lot of them are very, very nitpicky and just looking for a reason to hate a character. I mean, he was hardly even in the first movie. So I don't think that he deserves a lot of these complaints. Anyway, moving on with the review. He's a boring, flat character. Yes, in the third movie he was pretty boring and flat, but I will admit that, because he had very little screen time, and and served mostly as a means by which Cinderella could get out from her bad life. So I won't deny that he's a pretty boring character in the first movie. And I mean, in the second movie, I think that he has even less screen time. But, if you take the time to watch the third movie, he's really quite an interesting character. And while I wouldn't say that he's a super complex character, He does definitely have some depth to him. He's a three-dimensional character with depth to him. And I will be getting more into this in later complaints. So even though I do like him, even though I've grown to like him, in all the movies, not just the third one, most of my like for him comes from the third one. But I won't deny that he's a pretty boring character in the first two movies. But if you do find him boring in those, check out the third movie. He has no personality. This complaint gets thrown around a lot, and I mean a lot. I mean, Odette from the Swan Princess, Lola Bunny from Space Jam, Elsa from Frozen, Snow White's Prince, Prince Charming, Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, Philip from Sleeping Beauty, all of those characters have been accused of having no personality. And, like I said, while he has very little screen time in the first two movies and is pretty much a one-dimensional character and doesn't have much depth to him in those, he definitely has a personality. Basically any character does. Unless you're talking about a very minor character with one or two lines. Practically any character has personality. It may be not much of one, it may be a one-dimensional one, it may be a poorly developed one, a poorly written one, but every character, unless you're talking about a background character, has some personality. And again, check him out in the third movie, because that's when his personality really develops and shines. He's not proactive. Well, in the first movie, he isn't shown as being particularly proactive because the movie isn't about him. The movie isn't about him in the first movie, and he has very little screen time, so we don't really get to see much of what he does. The movie is about Cinderella and her journey to becoming a princess. It's not about Prince Charming and his journey to finding a princess or something like that. But again, if you watch the third movie, he's quite proactive and very much fights for his right to marry the girl that he wants, and that sort of thing. So, while he's not shown being proactive in the first movie or in the second movie, because he doesn't have a lot of screen time in that, and we don't really know a lot about his character, but that's not really a legitimate complaint about his character in the third movie. Again, watch the third movie if you want to see him being proactive. He's shallow, he wouldn't go after Cinderella. Well, for starters, the king sent the Duke after Cinderella. It's never told that Prince Charming wouldn't go after her, because his father sent the Duke after her without even checking to see if Charming wanted to go after her. But also, you have to take into consideration that, well, he's the prince, and you wouldn't really want a prince going around, possibly getting captured by crazed citizens that might want to hold him for ransom, in order to start a war, or something like that, or in order to get rich. So it was much safer just to send the Duke after Cinderella. So to me, it makes a lot more logical sense to send the Duke after Cinderella than the crowned prince after her. Also, you have to take into consideration the time period that Cinderella was made in. Because they still hadn't really perfected the art of drawing realistic, good-looking people, especially young men. I mean, the only other realistic young man they had ever drawn was Snow White's prince. And, so it would have been a lot more work for the Disney artists to have Charming with that much more screen time. I mean, when you think about the movies that were done between Cinderella and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, I mean, you've got the people that you've got in them are like in Pinocchio, you've got cartoony people like Geppetto and Stromboli and the Coachman. In Dumbo, you've got like the Ringmaster and the clowns, but you really don't have that many realistic people. About the only other realistic person I can think of is Pinocchio is a real boy, and the Blue Fairy, who only appear for a few minutes also. So that's another thing you need to take into consideration. He's shallow and only likes Cinderella for her looks. Where's your proof? Where? I mean, yeah, I know that, I know that when he sees her at the ball, he rushes right over to her, but it's called Love at First Sight. It's a frickin' fairy tale. It doesn't run on logic. So I don't really see that as being proof that he only likes her for her looks. And I mean, they do spend a few hours together at the mall, almost said mall, that would be stupid. At the ball, getting to know each other. They do spend a few hours together at the ball, getting to know each other, and, so, I mean, it's not like he just saw her, thought she was pretty, and went over and proposed to her, "Will you marry me?" So I really don't see that as proof that he only liked her for her looks. I mean, if you look at Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the prince heard Snow White singing and, went over to see her, and she ran away from him. So, I mean, they had even less time together than Cinderella and Charming did. And, I mean, also by that logic, Eric only likes Ariel for her singing voice. He was willing to marry any girl that fit the slipper. No, not really. I mean, if you watch the third movie, when, and I will get more into this in later complaints, but when you watch the third movie, when Anastasia comes in wearing the slipper, he immediately sees that she wasn't the girl that he danced with. And doesn't want to marry her because he can tell that she's not Cinderella. And the Duke was the one who came in and said to the king, the prince, sire, the prince swears his love only to the girl who fits this slipper. He didn't say, Charming never said, I'll marry whatever girl fits this slipper, or any girl that fits this slipper. Charming never said that. Then after the Duke says that, the king, the king tells the Duke to go out and, try it on every eligible maid in the kingdom, and if the shoe fits, bring her in. And the Duke does point out that the shoe could fit any number of girls, and the king says, well, that's his problem, he's given his word, hasn't he? But the shoe size, the shoe that she left was pretty much all Charming had to go on. And I think that he was thinking that, that at least he could narrow, at least he could narrow down the girls in the kingdom by whoever fit the slipper. He wasn't saying, well, whichever girl the shoe fits, I'll marry. It's gotta be the one I've danced with. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he meant, I think what he was trying to do was take pretty much his only clue to who it was and narrow down the options, narrow down the search to something, and hopefully bring in the girl he danced with and recognize her. That's what I always got out of it. He's stupid because he didn't remember Cinderella in the third movie. Huh? Like I just mentioned, when, as soon as Anastasia comes in wearing the slipper, he immediately recognizes that she's not the girl he danced with. And were you and I watching the same movie? Because he was under a frickin' spell in that movie. He couldn't remember her. And I mean, he could tell, as soon as he and Cinderella touched hands, he started to realize that she was his true love. And then when the mice explained everything to him, he started to remember. I mean, that's really nitpicky and looking for a stupid reason to hate him. no offense to anybody, but that's a really illegitimate reason to dislike him, because he was under a spell and really had no really had no way of remembering her until he started to fall in love with her again, and until the mice explained everything. He's lazy. How? Why? Because he didn't go after Cinderella himself? I mean, that, I don't see any, I've never thought of him as being lazy since, well, in the first and second movie, we hardly see him at all. Not enough to see him being lazy and laying around and doing nothing. And in the third movie, like I mentioned, he's very, he is shown as being very active. He's shown as being athletic and, doing very physical things and that sort of thing. Swinging on a rope to save Cinderella from the boat that she's being sent off on. So, I mean, I don't really see how he's lazy. I mean, even in the first two movies where we hardly see him at all, he's not shown as being lazy. And in the third movie, he's shown as being quite athletic and in quite good physical shape. I mean, he can, like I said, swing on a rope, jump over his father, all sorts of things. So, again, this is a pretty weak complaint. He's ugly. And again, like I mentioned, he's been compared to both a melted Ken doll and a robot, as far as how ugly he is. Really? Beauty is very much in the eye of the beholder. I mean, there are characters that I find very attractive, like, Cruella de Vil, that most people find butt ugly. And there are characters that I find very unattractive, like, Dimitri from Anastasia, that most people find, that most people find very attractive. So, I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If you find him ugly, that's your opinion, but pick a better reason than his looks to dislike him. I mean, disliking a character strictly because of their looks, that really, that has nothing to do with their personality, and is pretty pointless and shallow. No offense, but it is. I'm not gonna get too deep into this because I've been over it countless times with various characters. I don't care if you're talking about a hero, heroine, villain, sidekick, um, evil henchman, whatever. Disliking a character solely because of their looks is, it's definitely a weak reason to do it. I mean, like I said, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and if you find him ugly, that's your business, but pick a better reason than just his looks to dislike him. He's rude to the other girls because he rolls his eyes and yawns. While that may have not been super polite, you have to take into account the fact that this ball was pretty much forced on him by his father, and he had absolutely no interest in it. And no interest in finding a in finding a wife at this point. No interest in finding a wife at this point. So I don't think he was trying to be rude to the girls. I think he was just bored out of his skull at this ball that he had. That was forced on him, and bored of looking over these women that he had absolutely no interest in, and where he had absolutely no interest in finding a wife. But bored of just bored of the whole thing. So I don't think his intent was so much to be rude to the girls. I think he was just bored and wasn't thinking. I mean, yeah, he is the prince, so he's held to a much higher standard than than most people are, but he's still human. And I mean, if I was forced to go to a big party where I had to find a husband and look over guys I had no interest in, you bet I'd be bored too, and I would probably yawn. Which is one of the reasons why I think, while he's not a super interesting character in the third movie, I do think that he has a little bit more depth, or in the first movie, rather. While he's not a super interesting character in the first movie, and is arguably pretty boring, I do think that he has more depth to him than a lot of people give him credit for. Just because of some of the emotions that he expresses and that sort of thing. So, I'm not gonna lie, he is a pretty one-dimensional character. But I do think that he has a little bit more depth in the first movie than people give him credit for. And while I'm not going to lie, that definitely wasn't the most polite way to express his boredom. I mean, cut the guy some slack. He's only human, and he was forced to go to a party that he had no interest in, and look at women he had no interest in, and look for a wife which he had no interest in doing. And, I mean, the whole thing was his dad's idea. And, like my friend has mentioned, why is it that, Princess Jasmine never gets complaints for, basically, sicking her pet tiger on, on one of her suitors. But Charming gets hate for yawning at some girls. Huh? And finally, he was so bad they tried to fix him in the third movie. I wouldn't so much say that they tried to fix him as they tried to expand his personality. Like I've mentioned, he was pretty much a one-dimensional character in the first and the second movie. So they pretty much, if he was going to be a major character in the third movie, they needed to expand his personality. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, I mean, to me, there's everything right about trying to expand a character that doesn't have a lot of depth to them. So, I mean, it can be done poorly, like with the Looney Tunes show version of Lola Bunny. While I do think she's a funny character in her own right, she's pretty much the polar opposite of the Space Jam version of Lola. And, that's going about it the wrong way. I mean, while I do think that, Space Jam Lola needs expanding since she doesn't have a great deal of depth to her personality and is kind of a two-dimensional character, doing the polar opposite of her isn't the way to go, but that's not what they did with Charming. They turned him into a nice three-dimensional character that was interested in finding that was interested in finding a girl to settle down with, but didn't want to be forced into it by his father, and was also quite willing to fight for his rights, to marry the girl that he wanted, and was also very active and athletic and that sort of thing. I mean, they didn't have just a whole lot to go on in the first movie, since, like I said, he's kind of a one-dimensional character in that. But, no, I wouldn't say that he was so bad they tried to fix him. I just think that they expanded a lot on what existing personality we knew of. I mean, we knew that, that he was taking a while to find his, to find a princess to settle down with. And we knew a couple of other things about him, like, that he had somewhat grown apart from his father, and that sort of thing, mostly by what the king had talked about. So, no, I wouldn't say that they tried to fix him. Just expanded his personality, and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. Um... The... personally, I really like Charming. Like I said, I think he's a great, character in the third movie, and even a pretty good character in the first and second movies. He's my second favorite Disney prince, and in my top 10 favorite animated heroes. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And the links to my friend's video will be in the comments section below. Bye and see you next time.